Do you want to be in the top 10% of business leaders? Would you like content and effective employees? Would you like to minimize major employee issues? Or would you just want your vision of your company to be played out on a daily basis? Well, all you have to do to make that happen is be an effective, consistent, and fair communicator. I'm Tom Porter with Atomic Consulting, and let's talk about how to do that. An Inc.com study showed that 91% of workers feel that their supervisor doesn't communicate with them. Try going home and not communicating with your spouse for weeks on end and see where that gets you. Now, I'm not suggesting that the relationship with your spouse is as important as the relationship with the coworkers, but every relationship needs effective, purposeful, and rhythmic communication. Let's review some great tools and practices to implement in your organization that will give you that effective, purposeful, and effective communication that your staff desperately needs. Okay, let's talk about what you need to be an effective communicator. First of all, knowing you need to communicate is not enough. You need to set up a purposeful process to ensure you are consistent and effective at doing so. Let's talk about what you need to be an effective communicator with your employees. The first thing you need is praise. This is where a lot of leaders fall short, is in the praise department. They feel like, why should I praise an employee for doing what they're supposed to be doing, what I'm paying them to do? There's a lot of advantages to praise that you need to understand. So why praise? Well, first, they want to know when they're doing it right. They want to be recognized when they do it right. And you want to reinforce behavior that you want repeated. You want to reinforce those behaviors in your organization that you want them to exemplify. You've probably heard of Stephen Covey's emotional bank account. In his book, he talks about keeping the emotional bank account high. So praising, rewarding your employees, rewarding that relationship, letting them know when they're doing things right, which raises the balance in the bank account. So when you have to make a withdrawal, and for instance, in a disciplinary action, you still have a positive balance. Praising is extremely important, and it's the foundation for having good communication with your employee. So how do we go about praising our employees? Well, first, you want to praise as close to the praiseworthy event as possible to help reinforce it. You want to do it in public if possible, inappropriate. So the general rule is that you praise in public and you discipline in private. But know your receiver. Everyone is different. Some people don't like public praise, and then if they're an introvert, that may send them in the wrong direction. So know who they are so that you know how to praise them appropriately. And then make sure you're rewarding that behavior with something. It could be a high five, it could be a note or a card, it could be a soda or a candy bar, a movie ticket or a gift card. It really doesn't matter what it is, as long as that is something that's associated with the skill or the behavior you want repeated, and that is something you know they will enjoy. And that will reinforce that behavior. The next component of being an effective communicator with your staff is to have good discipline. Sometimes discipline is just necessary. An employee has fallen short and you need to make sure that you get them back on track. But before you discipline, there's some things that you need to do. First of all, be sure it's not your issue. I know that's hard to hear, but often I have found that the issue does not reside with the employee, but it resided with me, because I didn't give them the proper training, the proper tools, whatever it is to do their job. So always ask yourself these three questions before you actually discipline an employee. First question, has the employee been properly trained in this area? Have you given them the proper training? Have they received the proper training? Do they even know what's right in this particular case? Have your expectations been clear? Have you told them exactly what you expect when they do this particular task or this particular duty, what your expectations are for the result? And the third question you want to ask is, have I been consistent with how I've handled this situation? So for instance, if employees coming in late, do you address it every time, or do you let them, some employees go, some employees don't go? Maybe you let it build up before you say something. Have you been consistent in the way that you've addressed this in the past? So what were your answers to these questions? If you answered no to any of them, then that means it's time to get proper training in place, to set the appropriate expectations, and to be consistent with them. If you answered yes to all of them, well, it's time to start the correction process. So how do you start the discipline process? Well, first of all, be sure to communicate in private. Just as we talked about before, praise in public, but discipline in private. You're not trying to demoralize them. The goal in this process is to maintain the relationship with the employee. You want to correct the substandard behavior, but you want to maintain the relationship. And discipline has three distinct elements. It has mentoring, it has a written reminder, and then it has, finally, termination if all of that fails. Okay, so you asked all the questions and you've determined that it really is the employee that has an issue. And you need to start the discipline process. Well, the first stage of the discipline process is called mentoring. Mentoring is a formal verbal communication with the employee. Think kind of like a coaching session for the employee. And you're going to discuss a number of things during this time. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to state clearly where the employee fell short. So let's say they're not coming to work on time. So you would tell the employee, I need you to start coming to work on time. But more importantly that, you need to state clearly your expectations. So your expectations may be something like this. You need to be here early enough that you can get all of your stuff put away and clocked in and be ready to work by 8 o'clock. So that way he knows what those expectations are. Next, you're going to gain the employee's desire and commitment to change the problem. Have him verbalize it, that he knows that he's been coming in late and that he knows and is willing to correct it. Then you want to state your confidence that you know that he can overcome it. So let him know, I'm sure that you can take care of this. I appreciate you taking it seriously. Then the most important part of this entire process is to catch them doing it right. The next day when they show up to work on time, don't say to yourself, well, it's about time they showed up to work on time. Go to that employee and say, John, I so appreciate the fact that you got to work on time after our discussion yesterday. I appreciate it that you did it and that you took this whole process seriously. Thank you so much. What you did is you just reinforce that behavior, and he is less likely to ever have that behavior or that be an issue again. Now, you will typically do 1 to 3 mentoring sessions before you ever move to a written reminder. And it really depends on the severity of the issue. If you come in late, you might do 1 to 3. If it's something that broke a serious policy, you may only do 1. You can determine how many you do before you move it to the next level. You've given that 1 to 3 mentoring sessions and the employee still has not resolved the issue. Well, it's time to move to a written reminder, which is just an escalation because of non-compliance. It's going to be a more formal conversation and it's going to have a written record to it. You're going to do the same things you did in a mentoring session. You're going to state clearly where the employee fell short. You're going to state clearly your expectations. You're going to gain the employer's desire and commitment to fix the problem. You're going to state your confidence, you know they can overcome it. And you're going to catch them doing it right and praise them. But you're also going to tell them that this could be a permanent record in their file if not resolved. And that if they don't resolve it, that they could lead to termination. They need to know the severity of it at this point because they haven't been taking it seriously, obviously, till now. You do the same thing here. You do 1 to 2 written reminders, typically only 1. Again, it depends on the severity of it. But sometimes 2 written reminders are appropriate. Again, you can make that determination based on the severity of the issue. Well, the employee has ignored your mentoring sessions, he ignored your written reminder, and he still has not resolved the issue. It's time to terminate. The reality is this employee is not going to change it. If he hasn't changed it by this point, he's just not going to. The purpose of this process is really twofold. First of all, is to give the employee ample opportunity to fix the problem, to know that you've communicated with him, to know that you've given him the proper tools and training and authority to do what he needs to do. And the second thing it does is it gives you peace of mind that you did all that you could do before you had to terminate the employee.